After the drone footage exposed Karen and her board for demolishing my lodge, the HOA fell into chaos. Many thought the scandal would silence them for good. But Karen wasn't finished, not by a long shot. It began with a new ordinance quietly slipped into the community bulletin. In bold print it declared, "Outdoor activity prohibited after 6 p.m. All residents must remain indoors. Violators subject to HOA enforcement." When I first read it, I laughed out loud. The idea was ridiculous, straight out of some dystopian playbook. Who in their right mind thought they could dictate when people could breathe fresh air on their own property? But the laughter faded when neighbors began whispering that Karen had dispatched patrols. Actual patrols of board members and hired guards to enforce the curfew. Families who walked their dogs after dinner were fined. Teenagers who sat on porches were threatened. And one man told me he'd been physically shoved back into his house when he lingered too long outside. Enough was enough. That evening, just before sunset, I made a decision. I dragged a chair out to my porch, poured a glass of iced tea, and sat facing the pond. The air was cool. The frogs had just begun their chorus, and the first stars peeked through the twilight sky. 6 o'clock came and went. At 6:15, the guards appeared. 2 men in reflective vests marched down the lane, radios crackling, their flashlights already sweeping the area though it wasn't yet dark. They spotted me instantly. "Sir, you're in violation of HOA Ordinance 47B. You must return indoors immediately." I didn't move. "This is my land, not your HOA's. I'll sit where I please." One guard raised his voice. "Failure to comply will result in enforcement measures." I leaned back, sipping my tea. "Try me." They advanced. Behind them, I saw Karen herself, strutting like a general on parade, clipboard in hand. "Arrest him," she screeched. "He thinks he's above the rules." The guards lunged, but they hadn't expected resistance. Before they reached me, my dogs charged from the shadows. Massive German shepherds, trained and loyal. They barked and snapped, forcing the men back, their flashlights clattering to the dirt. Karen shrieked, waving her clipboard. "Control those beasts." I stood, voice booming. "You trespass on my property, you threaten me in my own yard, and you dare to call it enforcement? You want to fight? Fine. Let's fight." I pulled out my phone and hit send. Within minutes, the deputies arrived, summoned not by Karen, but by me. Their cruisers lit the night with red and blue, engines rumbling as they rolled down the lane. The guards froze. Karen tried to bluster. "Officers, arrest him. He's violating HOA law." The deputy in charge stepped forward, stone-faced. "Ma'am, there is no such thing as HOA law. What I see is you and your men trespassing on private property, making threats and inciting violence. That's a crime." Karen's mouth dropped open. But he was outside. It's after 6. The deputy's laugh was cold. "Being outside isn't a crime, but what you're doing is." By the end of the night, Karen and her guards were in handcuffs. Neighbors gathered along the road, some filming, others cheering softly as the once feared HOA was marched into patrol cars. For the first time in years, people dared to smile freely. Later, I sat again on the porch, the pond reflecting the moonlight, my spouse beside me. "You knew this would happen," they murmured. I nodded. Karen thrives on fear, but when you take away the fear, she has nothing. Tonight, the whole community saw that. The frogs sang louder, the crickets joined in, and for the first time in a long while, the night belonged to us. Not to her rules, not to her curfews, not to her madness. And as the patrol cars disappeared into the distance, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. The pond would always outlast Karen.